everybody, and hello, I'm Kate Young. I'm the founder and CEO of the Safeguarding Association, and I want to talk this afternoon about authority, about particularly where do we get our permissions from to take the action that we want to take. I've been working with a number of organisations recently, and this comes up time and time again, regardless of where I am or what I'm doing. But this has come up again and again over action that a particular person or organisation wants to undertake. And the confusion or the difficulty comes when somebody knows what they want to do and it might be the right thing for the child or young person, for that action step to be taken. But where we can get caught up as professionals is not knowing or misunderstanding where our authority to do something lies. So either where it comes from, or who has given us permission to do something. I would see it a lot, and I still see it a lot, around referrals. So professionals feeling uncomfortable about making a referral where a family maybe doesn't want the referral to be made. But I equally see it when we have local authorities involved with families and they want to take a particular action step, but they maybe don't have the permission to do so. And there's a misunderstanding that just because a young person or a child is in local authority care or local authority accommodation, that the local authority can do what they like, and make decisions about that young person whilst they are in their care. There are specific circumstances when that can actually happen. And what I'm seeing a lot of, whether this is the pandemic, whether this is just an uncertainty as more cases come through and people are finding their feet again, whether it's a churn, I don't know. But I'm seeing an awful lot of people struggling with where their authority is coming from. Where are they getting the authority to do a certain thing? And I thought it's worthwhile just having a conversation about this, because for the most part, our authority comes from law. It comes from statute. For those of us working in child protection, in safeguarding, then it will come from something like the Children Act 1989. One of the many pieces of guidance that sits alongside it might come from some later pieces of legislation. Maybe the Children and Social Work Act 2017 is giving permission for things. Maybe it comes from the 2008 Act. Maybe it comes from the 2004 Act. But it can come from usually our permissions as professionals comes from a particular piece of legislation or guidance that tells us what we can and can't do. And if we can do something, how we do that. That's the important bit as well. How do we do that? If we can do something, how do we do it? What steps do we need to take in order to do what we want to do? And if we don't have permission to do it, how do we get permission to do it? Usually that's either by getting permission from those with parental responsibility, or if you're a local authority, getting an order of the court. Because just because you've got parental responsibility doesn't necessarily mean you can go and do what you like. So first port of call, where is that authority coming from? Which bit of law tells me I can do this and I can make this decision for this child or for this young person, and I can take this particular action step? The other way is to have permission from those with parental responsibility. Do they say that you can do this? Have they delegated their parental responsibility or given permission for you to do something? We get that a lot if we think of school trips. parents sign parental consent to say that you can take their child somewhere else. You get it with medical treatment. Parents sign, or carers sign, those with parental responsibility sign to say that, yes, Mr. Doctor, Mrs. Doctor, you can do this piece of medical treatment on my child. You're giving them permission to do that. Those are fairly standard pieces. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. Sometimes there's some there are less black and white. In fact, I'd love to say, I think I work in a shade of grey. My whole world is shades of grey. Sometimes it's really clear, other times it's really, 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 really fuzzy. And it's when it's fuzzy that we have to be really, really careful, because it's really easy to think, well, I'm at point C, I need to get to point F. And actually, whilst there's all this fuzz in the way, why can't I just go there to there? And that might be it might on the face of it look like the easiest route to take. But if you don't know where your authority is coming from, you don't know if you can do C to F straight away. You might have to do a bit of a zigzag in order to get there. You might have to go and get permission from somebody else. You might have to get a number of bits of authority in order to take that step. We rarely as professionals fall foul because we've deliberately tried to cause harm. Rarely. What often happens, and by far the most common way that people get themselves caught out, is because they are trying to help. They can see that the easiest place to go from C to F is actually a straight line. That's where we're going. That's how we're going to get there. And what they miss in all of these shades of grey is that they maybe don't have the authority to do what they want to do. It might be the easiest route. They might actually be the one caring for the child. They might actually be the one who spends most time with the child. But just because it's the easiest route doesn't mean that it's the safest route, or that it's the most it's the route that gives you authority. It can be a very, very fuzzy area, and that's where we have to be really, really careful. Simon, I'm interested in the fact that the mental capacity act starts at 16. This means safeguarding becomes very fuzzy. This is something I talk about an awful lot, Simon. I specialise in working with those who work with 15 to 24-year-olds. It's a very grey and fuzzy area. And by far the biggest issue comes because professionals don't understand where their remit starts and ends. And we haven't, I think you're absolutely right. We struggle with where that crossover period. We've got the same thing now with domestic abuse. Domestic abuse sits at 16 in terms of victims. So they start at 16. And then we have this huge issue around those who are under 18 and how they make court orders. It's a very, very, very fuzzy area in this particular situation. It fascinates me, and I'm very much of the view that, particularly with those age ranges, it's very difficult to generalize, and I think you have to take these on a case by case basis and very carefully pick your way through where that authority is coming from. Is the young person making that decision? So if they're 16, are they making that decision for themselves? Are they taking that action for themselves and we're supporting them to make that decision for themselves? Are we overstepping that? Are we thinking that they should be going in a different route? Or are we taking parents' view, and where does all of that fit? It's a fascinating area for me, absolutely fascinating area. This and maybe a bit weird, but this grey and fuzzy area, I know it's difficult for practitioners, really difficult for practitioners when you want a simple answer to whether or not this thing can happen. Unfortunately, there are very, very rarely simple answers, and it's a case of being very careful about picking your way through those particular set of circumstances. And no, I don't think we are fully considering the contradictions as professionals. And that's part of the reason I adore working with professionals in this area, because being able to empower professionals who are working with 15 to 24-year-olds or plus gives me so much joy to see that they are able to advocate and help those young people advocate from a place of authority themselves without feeling like they are treading on people's toes or really struggling to work out how they pick their way through a particular process. So authority for me is something you have to think very, very carefully about. Where is it coming from? Is it from statute? If it is from statute, i.e. law, which bit of law is giving you that? And it may be more than one area. If it's from somebody else, what's their authority to give you that that go card to say, off you go, you can carry on? If it's from parents, again, similar considerations. There have to be careful considerations as well. If you are working with blended families, is the person giving you permission to do something actually the person who has the authority to give you permission to do what it is you're asking to do? So it is a grey area in some cases. However, it can be very black and white in others as to whether or not you can do what it is you want to do. But if in doubt, stop, think, and take advice before you take that action step. I'm Kate Young, and if you'd like to know more about the work I do with professionals, then please get in touch, send me a direct message on LinkedIn or via any of the other channels, or you'll find me at safeguardingassociation.com.